Jill for organising such a day with 6 speakers here. We're going to, because we've got so many speakers, we're not going to be able to allow questions within the time the speakers are meeting. If you've got any questions for the speakers, could you leave those till the end and catch up with the speakers individually? Okay, so our first speaker, Scott Hirschberger, Taro Access Maps. Welcome, Scott.
Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to give a quick thank you for having me. Thank you to Jill for inviting me back. It's been about 2 years since I was able to come and visit with everyone and really kind of share unexpectedly that we had launched phase 1 of the Access Map with Nick a couple of years back. But before I get into everything, I'd also like to thank my interpreter for making sure that we're able to have a truly inclusive event presentation this morning. All that said, I'll try and give a quick little overview of where we were, where we are, and what we're doing with this project. So just to kind of dive into everything, Access Maps as a company and organization, our goal is to provide trusted, transparent accessibility information data for anyone to view, access, and share across Australia and New Zealand. So you can see here, we've just got a few different devices that are on the screen. Each of them are actually showing the same form of report and accessibility information across each of them. But being able to talk about this myself, it pales in comparison to what the community feels on a regular basis, where I have had the honor of working in this sector for the better part of 7 years now. But through my time, both as the head of Health Metrics New Zealand and through starting Skillet, we've really been able to understand more about how the community engages with places that they're unfamiliar with, and also being able to truly understand what is required before going out, or even being invited out by a friend to a place that you just don't know about. So, we actually started tackling this project back in 2021. Worked with Nick Chester for a good while, and we released phase 1 of the map in a little bit of a limited fashion through a select app at the AGM back then. It had roughly 32 locations and outlined a lot of the accessible parks, reserves, and beaches and libraries throughout Tauranga. So, I guess what have we been up to since then? A good amount of time has passed. We've been able to really dive into our work and get to know Tan and the community much, much better. So, we have actually skipped what we normally do as an intermediate or a phase 2 launch, and we are going just straight to here's everything that we have. Here's what's coming out to the community and how we're actually going to make sure that everyone is able to access it, use it, share it, and really gain a lot of deeper value from what is on the map itself. So what is displaying on screen right now is actually me going through and using the map app that we're going to be launching with the council next month. This is diving into information not just about local parks and play areas or the libraries, but going into details about what amenities are actually around the locations that we're looking at. So we all know that accessibility exists on a spectrum, and what is labeled as an accessible parking space isn't the same across everything. So if you're looking to go somewhere and say a website says we have accessible parking, that's great, but there's a huge difference between curbside accessible parking or being able to have a spot that is going to accommodate a large van with a liftgate. So we provide the granularity of all of that, and also want to make sure that everything is searchable, shareable, able to find a lot of venues, and do it all in a way that is going to be sustainable, not just for the council, but for the community. Because as excited as we are to work with the city council on this, we want to make sure that this is going to be scalable and actually manageable for any organization throughout the region. So we do this by actually the product suite that we've developed over the last couple of years, where we have our access map that is going to be presented on the Delaware Council webpage and through their app, so anyone can take it with them at any time. Our overviews and our data capture tools. That way we are ensuring that there's a standard of data that is being displayed when it is being viewed, and also ensuring that all organizations, and I say organizations as a whole, because we're talking about nonprofits, sporting organizations, local businesses, franchises, are able to actually access the same technology to be able to take ownership of their accessible information and be able to give the community a standard way to be able to access it. So, just starting from the top down, because I want to make sure that we're transparent about everything that we do, and being able to share the process with the community is a big part of that. So anything that you see on the map is actually gone through our accessibility data capture. On the screen right now there is a phone that is actually using our data capture tool and was recorded yesterday while we were at the Mount Cotton pools recording their accessibility information. So everything that we do is actually live, recorded, and geo-stamped to make sure that all that information is trusted, which means that when we're going through this information, you can see exactly where the data is being captured, and that helps our assessor, who actually reviews all this information, know that it is trustworthy. I hate to say it, but we've actually told a number of different businesses and, should I say, very ambitious sporting organizations that we're not going to be working with them because they continuously try to fudge their data. And for us, the integrity of the data is everything. So anything that you see that is in our assessments has been reviewed and is kept up to date every 2 years. So all that information is actually managed and specifically tailored depending on what type of a venue is being assessed. And when I say a venue, I'm talking about pretty much any location where we would meet and gather, hold an event or an activity. So that could be the parks, the reserves, the beaches, but also airport, aquatic centers, gyms, anything that you can really think of throughout the city. And as these venues are actually cataloged and questions are answered in the overview, the questions change to make sure that all the information is actually being captured specifically for that. Because we know that things are much different when we go to the library versus when we go to a cafe. Part of this is also the fact that we're able to dive into amenities themselves. So I mentioned parking spaces earlier, but that I know that is just the most commonly used example, where we want to make sure that any information about parking spaces, accessible restrooms, where emergency meeting locations, defibrillators, drop-off locations, hearing loops, anything along those lines is actually displayed on the map. So any location that you are going into, and if you're saying, hey, we want to take a look at, I'll use Bay Court as a great example. If we're going to Bay Court and we're going to be attending a play or a speaking seminar, anything along those lines, Bay Court has one accessible parking space that is near their entrance, but where are the next accessible parking spaces that are closest to the venue? Through this, you can actually say, show me where the next closest accessible parking spaces are, and you'll be able to see all of them within 500 meters of the location. And the last part that I'm going to try and dive into before we start getting any further into it, is being able to actually make sure that all the information that's gathered, yes, it's going to be displayed through the map, and we're creating that as a point or a single point where everyone can access it, but we're also giving every single organization their own access page, which means that all the information that's gathered isn't just solely kept to the map, but it helps organizations be able to actually link to their accessibility information from their own website, through their social media accounts, and any other channels where organizations might be posting out this information ahead of time. So what we're seeing on screen now is actually a kind of side-by-side. The top screen is actually the Tauranga Airport's accessibility information as it is now, versus the screen on the bottom, which was going through the entirety of their accessibility overview, finding where the accessible parking is, and even being able to set navigation to start heading to that parking space rather than to the venue entrance. So this is our way of being able to make sure that every single location that is getting involved with the map also has something for their own business or for the organization themselves to be able to help facilitate that accessible journey and provide a WCAG 2.2 accessible web presence. And since we all know that, the why you're going somewhere is pretty much just as important as the place that you're going itself, I know that everyone loves being able to come, enjoy time here at the church, but I think if it wasn't for the amazing coffee and, pleasant conversations, good company, we might not be here on a Friday, as much as we all want to get out of the beautiful sun. So what we're also doing is making sure that all different organizations can provide information about their upcoming activities and events, not just through their access pages, but through the event calendar that's built into the map app itself. So this is for two reasons. One, to be able to promote awareness about different accessible and inclusive options throughout the city, but two, also promote awareness about different activities that might make a location not accessible as well. I connected with a couple of councils in Australia last year and talked about how the Formula One race that was going to be happening is something that, everyone should be able to be aware of. But if you're also hosting, should I say, regular marathons at a park as well, that might deter a number of visitors that are going to be saying, hey, crowds aren't my thing, fast-moving people that are running competitively is not a good idea for me to be around. So it's going to help me actually structure my day and also be able to say, hey, I want to go here, but not while this is happening. And I think this is one of the things that we've been most happy about, being able to say whatever you like, you can take with you. So when we originally made the map back in 2021, I believe, the biggest piece of feedback that we got was, this is amazing, but we don't want to continuously go back to the same web page to be able to view the map. So we created it as an app that is actually device agnostic. And by that, I mean, you're not going to find it in Google Play or the App Store, because those are notoriously inaccessible. But there's a link that'll actually go straight through and allow for the map and app to be installed on any device, which means it'll also automatically adhere to your accessibility preferences. So if you have high contrast visibility, enhanced font size, screen reader, already adjust for all of that. So the next portion of that is actually saying, let's find, favorite, and share. Because everything that we do, we know that being able to take our own approach, or the Enabling Good Lives approach, saying we're going to be self-directed in what we want to do is great, but we also understand that with a spectrum of accessibility, I might need to organize a taxi, or I might need to organize support staff to be able to go to particular venues or particular events. So let's make it easy for everyone to be able to save their favorites, share with everyone they would like to share in these events and spaces with, and be able to make it as easy as possible to get back to where you would like to. So on here is just a quick example of one of the local businesses that's actually signed up. Or actually, no, this is Colton Park. I can just jump to the next, because we all know Colton Park's absolutely beautiful, amazing place to go. But it's also an example of a council venue. So Tauranga has done an amazing job and is seen throughout New Zealand as pretty much the council to follow when it comes to accessibility. I've been very proud to be able to hang our hat on the work we've done, and also be able to point to the work that Tam and the team have done as an example for others to follow. But we also know that as good as the council is at what they do, the council also only makes up about 20% of what we engage with on a daily basis. We did a lot of looking into it, and through our kind of due diligence, there's around 100 to 120 different council venues, and there's around 5,500 local businesses, nonprofits, and organizations that we rely on regular services through. So we know that our community uses, say, libraries, accessible parking, and different council-provided services very often. They'll also be more regular to use different medical, different medical facilities, go to the grocery store, different things that we have to do on a regular basis as well. So for all of that, we've actually made sure that everything that we're doing is able to, again, be used by local businesses, be able to register, sign up, and actually be able to take ownership of their own accounts through what we're doing. So TAN and the City Council have actually very generously said they're going to buy 100 local licenses for organizations that submit their interest and say we want to be a part of this for the first year. So through that, we're really going to expand and make sure that we're bringing more organizations, people, and just opportunities in. Trying to make, just say, accessibility really visible throughout the entirety of the community. So this, what's happening on the left-hand screen is actually an example of one of Tauranga's best houses that has actually joined the map and wanted to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We want to understand accessibility, and we also want to have a resource for anyone that's going to be booking through our website to be able to have them used as well. So with that said, I think that everyone might hear from my voice. I'm a little bit hoarse. I've let everyone know that I have a 7-month-old that's teething and decided to wake up at 4 a.m. this morning. And as excited as I am, and as excited as Tan and the team are, I'm only able to be in so many places at once. So that's why we also partner with different organizations within the community, such as our badge partners that do amazing work with local businesses and other organizations to promote awareness around accessibility and future training. So Hidden Disability Sunflower, Phil Turner's Accessibility TIC, B-Lab, NZDSN, all the different organizations that might be working with these organizations as well are able to actually display this accreditation and this MAHI on each of their profiles. So if you're looking into different locations that are, say, sunflower friendly, or are going to have staff that have gone through accessibility and inclusion training, this is a great way to be able to actually understand that these organizations are really putting in the work. But the part that I'm kind of most excited about today is to talk about what we do with local organizations as well. Being able to partner with different groups, thought leaders, individuals to say, hey, this is where we are, this is what we're going to be doing in the long term, and be able to find different ways to reward and give back to the community through different referral pathways. So if you are excited, you know different businesses that you would like to come on board with this, please scan the QR code. It's a way for different organizations to be able to register their interest. Or I'll flip to the next page and I'll give my contact information. Or if you want to be able to get in touch and say, hey, this is something I'm really excited about, this is something that I'd love to be able to talk about, not just for this year, next year, but for a longer duration. I'd like to be able to talk with different kind of groups that understand accessibility and have the appetite to be able to say, hey, since we're asking each of our partners to refresh their accessibility overviews every 2 years, I've come across a number of different organizations that have said, hey, this is great, but I don't have I'm just time poor. I just am not confident in being able to access or capture the information myself. So we provided different means for the organizations listing on the map to request one of our partners to go in and capture their data for them. And this is something that we're doing as a paid service. So anyone that is asking, hey, can you come in and access this data or capture this data for us, we want to make sure that the community is actually gaining the benefit, both financially and being able to actually engage with the map itself. So if anyone wants to be able to find out more information about the project, please scan the QR code. If anyone would like me to send through information about any of this, just personally, you can contact me on either of these emails and be happy to, provide more information. All that said, please contact me through this. I'd like to stick around for a little bit longer today, but unfortunately I have to be somewhere at 11:30. So, and this gives me a great pleasure to stay and lets me put Tan in a slightly uncomfortable position. If I can't answer your questions, please go and just see Tan whenever you can. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Lawrenson and Jane Lyle to talk about something that I'm sure that a lot of people are very interested in. Welcome to the
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. Thank you. Kia ora, everyone. It's good to be here and to see you again. Thanks for your presentation, Scott. That was great. I'm feeling a lot of pressure now because we've got nothing like that. We're here today to talk to you about the recent review of Whaikaha and disability support services and some of the reasons for that and what that is going to mean. The information that we're talking about today is all publicly available, so I'll just ask Jill to flick that up really and to show you where that stuff's available. Because you can access it if you want. So when a few months ago the government came in and realised that there was a big issue within Whaikaha, and that was around an overspending, a significant financial risk that the government considered that disability support services were in, and they instigated a review that was carried out and I think finished in about August that I'm sure you all are aware of. The review found that there was unsustainable spending and a lack of fairness and transparency about what disabled people can access around the country, and inconsistency around what people can get and how they access services. You'd all be aware that there's EGL sites around the country in Waikato, Christchurch and in Palmerston North, and within those sites people can access funding and personal budgets in a different way than they can in other parts of the country. In parts of the Bay of Plenty, doesn't include Rotorua, we've got that thing called enhanced individualised funding that is available and gives people more flexibility around how they can use their funding, but in other parts of the country that sorts of funding is not available. So those are the sorts of things they were talking about when they talked about what disabled people can access and that there's inconsistency around that. As a result of the review, there was some quite urgent things put in place to stabilise the system, or what they talked about stabilising the system. And there was a task force developed that is in place now to follow up on those recommendations. There were 7 recommendations from the review panel, and the first one was that there would be budgets for NASC agencies. You might be surprised, but the NASC agencies haven't had a budget for a few years now. It's kind of all been managed at a national level by the ministry, and that arguably led to issues around budget management and a blowout in the budget when they just found out what it was. Recommendation 2 was about freezing the funding for residential care And recommendation 3 was to take no action on a price increase for providers this year. So, and those are the 3 things that were put in place quite quickly. So now, SupportNet and other NASC agencies, we do have a budget. We're expected to manage that, and we're expected to stay within that. There's in other parts of the government sector, health, education, wherever you look these days, there's significant budget challenges and there's significant expectations that those agencies will manage that budget. And we're no different than that. So they've given us a budget, said manage it. One of the first things they did was to freeze residential care. What they meant by that was that there'll be a budget for residential care, there'll be a number of people who are already in residential care, and you can't go outside your budget and you can't add people to residential care unless someone else leaves. Not many people leave residential care, so it's quite a stable client base. So that's had quite an impact, particularly on families where people had plans for people to, for the young people usually to move into residential care. That's not a service that's available currently for a lot of people, and that has made quite an impact, and is having quite creating a number of challenges. We have people who are, for example, in hospital who we can't place outside of hospital. We have people who need to be moved away from home who we aren't able to move into those services. So that's a significant challenge. The other one was that there wouldn't be a price increase for providers, which I'm sure they're delighted about.
Was that sarcasm, mate?
Those first 3 recommendations are the ones that have been put in place kind of immediately, but they're also working on others, like updating assessment and allocation settings, establish criteria around people who can get flexible funding, and strengthen how the ministry works with agencies. What I haven't said so far is that Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, and you will all be aware of this, the funding that Whaikaha used to allocate has now moved to Ministry of Social Development, and the DSS services have moved to the Ministry of Social Development. So there's a whole new bunch of people and processes involved in that. And Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, is to become more of a policy developing and advocacy agency, arguably. That's what the aim is. So there's a lot expected as a result of this review, and quite a lot expected to happen quite quickly. I don't know how much is going to happen quickly, but some of you have probably already felt some of the impacts of it, perhaps around residential availability, but also around some of the changes that have been put in place around what people can use their individualised funding for. That's there are more restrictions on that now, and there's arguably less flexibility around some of that. So we are grappling with that within SupportNet, and hopefully for most of you there won't be too much of an impact around that, but there are changes associated with the residential service availability and with how enhanced individualised funding can be used. Which are probably the areas that you folks are going to be most impacted by. So should we talk a bit about what people can and can't do with their leave now?
So, I guess for people who've been using flexible funding in this area, probably under EIF, you'll be aware that there's been the 4 purchasing guidelines, and in a way they haven't changed, so they are, Don's put me on the spot a little bit. The purchase has to be, should help the person live their life or make their life better, needs to be something that they need because of their disabilities. It has to be a disability support. Needs to be reasonable and cost effective and can't be subject to a limit or exclusion. So what's happened as an outcome of that is that the particular areas where they've sort of tightened up, I guess is the best way to put it, is around things that sit as a funding responsibility of another publicly funded body. So education is probably the biggest area. You know, we know that huge numbers of the disabled young people we work with are either not in school or are only attending school part-time. And we know that prior to the changes, people were using their disability support funding to provide opportunities for their young people in that gap. And if you're directly affected by it, you will already know that that has had to stop. And I know that that's caused a lot of stress for a lot of people. The other one that's been quite major from what we see is around using disability funding for maybe therapy or sort of psychological support, maybe around challenging behaviour or understanding the impacts of a disability diagnosis. And so those things have also all had to stop. And I don't have to tell any of you how difficult it is to try and get those services from the places that in theory should be funding them, because you know they are as stretched as everybody else, whether that's education, child development services, child and adolescent mental health services, any of those places. You know, their position isn't much better than ours, and in fact probably quite often worse. Other things that have impacted people quite significantly is the restrictions around travel. So only local travel can be claimed, and there's still quite a bit of back and forth about what constitutes local travel, but really it's just within a person's local area. And then the other impact has been, I know for a number of the families that I'm aware of, limitations around accessing respite. So families that might need to move out of their own home to get respite because their disabled family member might have equipment or whatever it might be. The home might be the only place that's sort of physically safe. And families used to be able to claim reasonable costs for accommodation to, I don't know, go and stay in a motel down the road or whatever it was. So that can't happen at the moment, and that's really challenging for a number of people. The other thing that we got reminded about just in the last little while is particularly around the reasonable and cost effective, the fourth purchasing guideline criteria, a very specific directive randomly around Lego. So Lego is out. It's been decided that it doesn't meet the criteria of being reasonable and cost effective. So I know that there are a number of families who've used significant portions of their allocation, and I'm not talking big allocations, because Lego has been a really important part of their family members' kind of sensory needs and a form of respite and all of that. So yeah, I was quite surprised, really. I think we were when, you know, like that one thing kind of got picked rather than a range of things.
Yeah, you can rent it. They gave a link to be able to rent it.
Yeah. But I know the Lego nerds in my life like to have it on the shelf when it's finished, you know. So putting it back in the box and sending it back, I can just imagine would create a whole lot more stress for a lot of people. So it's stuff we're really grappling with, all of that. And then the other thing is the whole we've got a ring-fenced budget, but we've still got people coming in. So, you know, we are having hard conversations with people every day at the moment about how their allocation's being utilised. We're doing that now because we have been told that if we don't get it under control, there could well be a directive just to go through and take a percentage off everybody. And that's not, it's just not going to work. So those of you that are on the other side of those conversations, just, I guess I would ask on behalf of our team to just kind of, you know, we get that it's really stressful and difficult, but just kind of try and remember to be kind and not personalise it to the person that's having that conversation with you. Yeah, because our team do find it really difficult. So. We thought we'd allowed a bit of time for questions. I'm not sure if we have, even though we were talking 3 minutes.
Jane, sorry. I think that we've been told what we can't do, and that's hard for us. Can anybody share with us what we can do? Because I think from a therapy point of view, with my personal situation, I have a suicidal teenager. He's suicidal because he can't mainstream in school. The school he goes to cannot accommodate him now, not educated enough. The SENCO is not even qualified as a SENCO. So here we have a boy who wants to commit suicide because he can't go to school. Now he can't go to Rocky because you don't pay, it's not paid for. There's truancy, we don't send him to school. I have to work to earn an income to keep afloat. What can we do? It's really a dismal environment for all of us at the moment because there's all these things we can't do. Are there things that we can do that can get us therapy or things because no one's supporting us?
So one thing, and this, you know, this sounds a bit harsh, but it's a reality. Most young people are in receipt of the Child Disability Allowance. That is about $3,000 a year. So it's never been designed to be targeted to specific things. It's been designed to recognise the fact that the person requires 24/7 support, I think is the actual wording of it. And Gary's here, so I'm sure he'll help with that. But I guess the only other thing I can say is that for people, Paula will hate me, for people under 19, CCS have a contract and they are happy to support families around advocacy into education, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, and I would suggest that people feed back to the government, to Whaikahata, MSD, Ministry of Education, feed back about what's happening and the consequences of these decisions.
Someone over here, put their hand up.
Oh, it was me, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a newbie to this neurodiversion aspect, and I'm a newbie actually asking for assistance for my autistic son that's just been diagnosed. I guess from understanding your complexities at the moment, but from a new entrance requesting assistance, I'm getting very generic emails that are not actually specific to my son. I'm even getting emails that are acknowledging he's got ADHD, but he actually has autism. So I'm in a state of querying a personal review, and I'm hearing you going kind of like, this is generically how we have to do things and try and be kind to us. But from my perspective, I'm needing some accountability and personalised attention to, I think every single child has a different kind of need, and I know that that's your requirement that you're in. But to receive a generic no, when child is clearly at risk for himself, all I can do is just ask for a peer review, but that still isn't actually telling me for the new person without any funding, what hope does my family have?
Are statistics being kept on the tightening of access to the assessment?
So one of the things that I mean, you've raised a valid point. So one of the things that we've also been told, instructed to do is to, this is almost a direct quote, but probably not quite, apply the eligibility criteria rigorously.
So does that mean every single new person coming through gets a generic night?
No,
Until they
and
actually have-
I don't know who you are, I'm sorry, and I don't know what's happened, but the use of the pretty much every letter is individually edited. So there might be some standard phrasing in that, because I can tell you now that the generic letter is an embarrassment to send, and we basically don't send it.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's being added in there that's referring to services who have no idea you're referring services. So there is some accountability, I'm sorry, with what you're sending in a generic state isn't actually individualised at all. And you're actually sending us to services who have no idea that you're actually doing that. So there is confusion within your criteria. Does that make sense? Because I'm finding that response not actually acceptable. It is not individualising a single person. I've had 3 individual responses that are very generic and referring me to services who have no idea who is referring them.
It sounds like quite a personal issue, so we're going to
It's a
stay
generic thing, so-
stay for a little while, and
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to you outside
I
of
like
this
to
debate.
add.
No, I'm good, thank you. Thanks very much. Hello everybody, my name is Daniel Sears and I'm the Regional Disability Advisor for the Bay of Plenty for Ministry of Social Development and Business.
Kia ora everybody, my name's Helen and I'm the Employment Coordinator based in Rotorua at the Ministry of Social Development.
Okay, so we've come to talk to you today about the main products and services that MSD provides. As already been mentioned, there's Q&A at the end of the talk, but we will be around to help anybody who has any questions for us. So today we're going to talk about what MSD does, the main benefits, any extra help that MSD provides, and the support into work services that are offered as well. So work and income is part of the Ministry of Social Development. Other arms of MSD include StudyLink, senior services, youth services as well. And we work closely with other government agencies like Oranga Tamariki, Kaha, and Ministry of Housing. MSD does a huge range of things, including training for employment, getting people ready for work. Some of those programs are run directly through MSD, but others are run by community organisations and services, which is funded by MSD. And what's available can vary from region to region. So looking at the main benefits and support, this is an overview of the different types of benefits that we can assist with. The bottom tier are the main benefits. These replace income for those who aren't in full-time paid employment. Excuse me. They include sole parent support for people who are raising children alone, youth and young parent payments, and superannuation. The main ones for people who are unable to work due to health conditions or disabilities are job seeker support with a medical deferral or supported living payment. The next tier is, the next tier up is for extra help. that can either be accessed alone or can be added onto a benefit. I'm not quite sure how I scroll past the, can I just ask for some help here? Oh. Okay, lovely, thank you. Right, thank you. Yeah, so the next tier up is extra help. That can either be accessed alone or can be added onto a benefit. These payments include winter energy payment, accommodation supplement, as well as disability allowance and child disability allowance. We can also provide childcare assistance, which can help those managing medical conditions or assist those returning to work or completing courses and training. Finally, emergency help. This can be accessed for things like essential dental care, food and other unforeseen and essential costs. It can either be recoverable or non-recoverable. In other words, some of those emergency costs have to be paid back and some of them don't. So with the job seeker support benefit, there are two types of job seeker support. So for job seeker itself, you need to be actively searching for full-time work or engaging in work readiness and preparing for work activities. And then there's the job seeker with the medical deferral, which is the one that is done through a medical certificate from a doctor or a nurse practitioner explaining why a person has to be exempt from work obligations, and there are review periods that are based on what the doctor's recommendations are as to how often MSD will review those. The next type of benefit is supported living payment, and we use the term permanent and severe to determine a person's eligibility for that benefit. So if a GP who provides us with a medical certificate tells us that the condition is severe and is likely to be permanent, i.e. it's likely to last for longer than 2 years, those are the two eligibility criteria that we use to determine that. And also a person who's totally blind is also eligible for supported living payment. Then there's a supported living payment carer benefit, and this is for a person who's caring for someone who would otherwise need rest home, hospital, residential level care. They must be 18 if they don't have a dependent child, or 20 years plus in all other circumstances. And it can't be your partner or spouse because they're already included in the main benefit, but it can be for a parent looking after a child with a disability. Disability allowance is a weekly additional payment for anyone on a benefit, including national super, or someone who is on a low income and meets the earning criteria. It's paid for ongoing regular medical costs relating to a health condition, injury or disability that is expected to last for longer than 6 months. The current amount is up to $78.60 per week. This also includes costs for gardening, lawns, primary care costs like GP visits, things like that. It can include counselling, travel to health appointments, special foods, medical alarms, and pharmaceutical charges like blister packs, things like that. There's no age limit, so children as individuals can be entitled to disability allowance over and above what parents might be receiving, and it's for people, there's no age limit, so it can be for over 65s as well. The person needs to complete the application form, and the GP has to complete the medical certificate for that. Then there's the child disability allowance, and I'm really sorry that it's a bit confusing and people sort of don't really know. You know, they think that that's the disability allowance for the child, but it actually isn't. It's the child disability allowance, which is in recognition of extra care that a child with a health condition or disability requires. And that's a fortnightly payment to the parents or the guardian of the child with a serious disability or health condition. And the amount for that currently is $59.23 per week. It is regularly assessed. Sometimes people think, well, I received it last year, why don't I receive it this year? The main reason for that is because a child's needs can change, and that's why it needs to be reviewed accordingly. Good. Okay, so we're totally aware of, sorry, I'm late for you, yeah. We're aware that, you know, people have to wait a long time on, on the phone to call centres. So one of the easiest ways of being able to process what you need is to use My MSD. You can use it on your phone, you can use it on a computer, and get access on there. You can declare income, adjust your accommodation costs, apply for extra assistance like food grants and emergency dental costs. So for many people, they will also have specific ways in which they prefer to communicate. If you're not asked, it's really important that you make sure that you have a statement put into our system that recognises your preferred method of communication. That may be via text, email, or written note, and for some, a language interpreter. MSD has 9 multilingual lines to help those who prefer to speak in their own language. iSign, online interpreters, can be used, or NZ Relay. MSD's Deaf Services supports those who are deaf or hard of hearing, or who may have a speech impairment. And then we'll move on to our financial supports into work, and Ellen will be able to speak to that for you.
So MSD has a whole range of financial supports available to help people access training and employment. So some of those things include wage subsidies. So that's a subsidy, an incentive payment to employers, and that's in recognition of an investment that that employer may be making into an employee, particularly where people are disadvantaged in the labour market and may lack those entry-level skills that are required to get that position. We also have apprenticeship and training funding. So there's Apprenticeship Boost, and then there's Mara and Mahi. Mara and Mahi is for people that are starting their apprenticeships. So that's wage subsidies for the employer. We pay for the NZQA qualification and other work-related training, and also incentive payments to the apprentice themselves. So $1,000 3 times a year for those apprentices if they're keeping up with their study and remaining in that employment. We have a whole range of support funds for whānau with disabilities or health conditions that are wanting to enter employment. So some of that funding can be in the form of a wage subsidy, and other funding is available for accessibility needs. So it might be for a larger scale workplace modification, or it could be for a smaller item, such as a reader or something like that for a computer. We also fund job coaches and supervisors for people who are needing extra support to learn their role, or even just to stay in their employment to be able to perform their job. We have seasonal work assistance, so that's assistance for people who are engaged in seasonal work. So for our area, of course, there's kiwi fruit's really big. The other areas also have a lot of orchard work and the like as well. There is the ability to earn alongside a benefit. So people can earn up to job seeker support. I think it's around $80 a week before it starts to affect their entitlements. The first entitlements that income will affect are the non-taxable allowances, so accommodation supplement, temporary additional support, those types of allowances. And then once you go over and above that $80 a week, it would start to affect the main benefits, so job seeker support or supported living payment, sole parent support. For people that are on supported living payment with that long-term health condition or disability who decide that actually I'd really like to give work a go, but I'm unsure how I'm going to get on, how many hours I can do, whether or not employment is going to be sustainable for me, and we offer an employment trial. So that's up to 6 months. You can try a job. That gives you time to see what your capabilities are and to determine what's a sustainable amount of hours that you can work each week. So during that time you would remain on the supported living payment and any income would be abated. We have a team of people, so there's people like myself. I'm an employment coordinator, so I specialise in helping people with health conditions or disabilities move into employment. We also have work brokers and a dedicated team of case managers who do a similar thing. So case managers can help with employment planning, so setting goals, identifying transferable skills, those types of things, referring people to agencies for things like curriculum vitae. We support people with interview skills and preparing for interviews, and then we support people with preparing to actually start their work and managing any barriers that they might have. So for example, that could be childcare, it could be transport to get to work, those types of things. We connect people with employers. So if someone comes to us and says that they'd really like to work in hospitality, and for example, a cafe, we can approach employers on their behalf and profile that person. I think that's about covered what we do in terms of employment and assisting people. There's just a couple of other things actually that have just come to mind. So we do fund short-term employment-related training courses, so for example licensing, so driver's license, wheels, tracks and rollers, forklift, heavy traffic licensing, those types of things. Other work-related courses, so for example people who are wanting to train to be in traffic management. And we also do funding in some circumstances for NZQA qualifications, so longer term studies, so for degrees and the like as well. Do you have a question?